Welcome to Ask Gwen, everyone. To those of you who've been around me for I don't know, past 10 years now, know that I am a special ed kid, was a special ed kid, still am a special ed kid, even though I'm in college. And today I have the honor of interviewing Chris, who teaches special ed online. Yes, my segue has something to do with this episode of Chris because he is one of my heroes right now. Special ed is one of the toughest education sectors to be in, especially right now. But Chris is lucky enough to do it at home, online. So, yeah. So just be prepared. We may get into the special ed realm. And for those of you that think Chris and I speak French, I'll try and explain the terms as we go along, but I'm going to let Chris take it away and start sharing his story.
Well, thank you. And first of all, I want to share my appreciation for your work and being such an advocate for those who find themselves struggling a little more than others. I greatly admire myself of your work. And
Well, I
so,
appreciate that, Chris. I
right.
appreciate that because I know from personal experience that special ed is not the easiest way to go about things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you and I know this from a college setting, and I know this from a high school setting as well. Um, you get thrown in that individualized education plan IEP, and you as a teacher get thrown in that IEP, and it's like, now what do we do? Now what do we do? And at the college level, um, I, as a student, have to hand each of my professors a letter saying these are my accommodations. And the letter is so generalized that it's not even funny. I mean, they don't even mention the special ed we're talking about, whether it's be cerebral palsy or dyslexia or autism or Down syndrome, or list goes on and on. They just say, these are the accommodations, you guys deal with it. So I have seen letters, I have been told by professors of mine that when we have to come up with these ideas for you, or you have to come up with these ideas on your own and clarify it by us. And so that's why I'm doing the work I'm doing to educate people about special needs, because I'm trying to help people like Chris here. I am trying to help people like Chris who's stuck in the classroom, not and even though he understands special ed because he's been doing it for many, many years, but still, it's still an educational barrier to special ed.
Yes. And, like I said before, what you are doing is extremely admirable and courageous. When I think about the work that I do, especially online, it's a whole, it's with middle school students, primarily since my two areas of licensure are ASD, autism spectrum disorder, and LD, learning disabilities. I usually work with those kinds of, those areas of students. And so, I am well versed in, work helping kids deal with social situations or having to tackle a challenging text for a for their grade level, but there are so many different kinds of areas of special ed that talking with you and hearing your stories is very educational to me, even though I may have done some work with uh, students with cerebral palsy during my different studies. So would you like me to talk about how I started in special ed?
Sure, I would love that. And of course, um, Chris started all this, you guys, before COVID hit. Before COVID hit. So he didn't necessarily have to transfer into online studying. Chris and I were very lucky that I say he and I, knew how to use Zoom, knew how to interact with people on Zoom, because when we all got live turned upside down due to COVID, Chris and I had Zoom in our back pockets, whereas a lot of people didn't, especially in the teaching field.
Yeah, it's kind of funny actually. I really wasn't that well versed in Zoom. We have other uh, programs that we use. I actually became well versed in Zoom by starting my own podcast due to my experience with necrotizing fasciitis, but we can get into that a little bit later. That's a
Yeah.
whole other story. Anyway, about 2007, I had a regular not regular, but a elementary education license and a middle school language arts license here in Minnesota. But you could open up a window, throw a rock, and hit someone with my qualifications. There are lots of them here in Minnesota. So an acquaintance, an administrator of mine, and a superintendent here in New Ulm suggested I should go for my special education license. So I did, basically. I went to Minnesota State University Mankato and started taking classes. And within a year and a half, I was able to earn everything, but I had gone through all the classes except for student teaching. And I happened upon a vacancy in a town about an hour northwest of New Ulm called Wabasso. They are the Wabasso Wabbits. And yes, the rabbits are their mascot, but I like saying Wabbits just to irk some of them playfully. And they had a position open for point 2 language arts for 8th grade and point 8 special education, LD, which is right up my alley. And not only do they have those, they are also looking for someone with drama experience because they wanted to rejuvenate their drama program. Just so happens, I have that. So it was a match made in Wabasso for me. So I worked there for 4 years. And funny thing though, I only taught special ed for 1 year. After my first year, they wanted to put me into a first grade classroom. So for the rest of my time in Wabasso, I was a classroom teacher. Then my wife and I decided to expand our family. And when I was teaching for those 4 years in Wabasso, we had one son. But then before my 4th year, my wife and I decided, you know what? Let's kick it up a notch or 2 notches. Let's have twins. When you live an hour away, having 1 kid is enough. When you live an hour away from your job. When you have 3 kids under 4 and you work an hour away, that gets a little tough. So during that 4th year of teaching Wabasso, I started looking around for teaching jobs. Toward the end of the school year, I still hadn't found anything, but I was talking to a few people about teaching online. Over the summer, I interviewed and received a job teaching special education for Minnesota Virtual Academy, which was housed in Houston, Minnesota. whenever I say Houston, people think, oh, Texas?
Yeah.
No.
No.
So thankfully, the superintendent in Wabasso allowed me out of my contract, and I exchanged my commute of 50 miles one way to 50 steps.
250 steps. I love it.
Yes,
50 miles, 250 steps. I
yes.
love it. I absolutely love it. No, I truly do. And so, Chris, I have a question for you.
Yes.
What, with the purposes of anonymity here, what has been your favorite success story in all your years of special education, and what has been the, I'll put it this way, what has been the most challenging story of the years of special education?
Okay, so I'll start with your first part of the question with the most gratifying. I have, I recently have worked with a student who has multiple disabilities, but he's brilliant. He's very smart and very quick-witted. But there's a lot of social struggles, a lot of emotional regulation struggles. And when I first encountered this family, I had heard that, oh, this, watch out, there is a lot of things going on. Just, we pray for you.
Oh
But
boy.
it it turns out that, in the time working with this student, that we have become very close, and the student has made incredible gains in so many areas. And so working with this student has made it more exciting to teach, because there's always some kind of joke that the two of us tell to each other,
Yeah.
or there's always something to celebrate every time we work together, that I feel. On the other hand, teaching online really shows um, how important parents are to the education equation, as I call it, because the mindset of the parent really does um, set the tone for education for the student. And there have been actually a couple times in my past 8 years teaching online, that no matter how hard I try, no matter how many ways I try to connect with a student, it's so hard to make progress when they, and I mean by they, I mean the family, doesn't come up to with their end of the bargain. I can't go to the student's house because
No,
A,
especially now, not.
it's creepy, and two, sometimes I'm teaching students 300 miles away, because Minnesota is very tall, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of ground to cover. I mean, I've taught students that live down the road from me. I've taught students who live, like I said, 300 miles away. And so you have to try your best no matter what the distance is, but yet the family has to step up to the plate as well.
Thank you. And I think a lot of teachers who will be listening to this, and I will send it to one teacher friend who's in the classroom right now and doesn't have the luxury of working online, even though she could work online. But I will send it to one teacher friend, and she's going, who knows me really well in person, and she's going to say, "Thank you, Chris, for thank you, Win, for making that clear," because so many people think oh, what am I going to do about this Susie Q's family not stepping up to the plate? And it's like, okay, we, so my next question, because teachers gonna be like, thank you, Win, thank you, Chris, for answering the prayer on the podcast. But what is what is it that I'm a retired educator, so I can speak from my own experience. But what is it that parents should do to help all of us, including you, and including the teachers who are now in the classroom, obviously masked up, social distance, whatever they're doing now in the classrooms, I don't even know because I'm retired. But what is it that parents can do to help make everything just a little bit easier?
That's a fantastic question, Win. The most important thing that a parent can do is keep a strong line of communication open. And being an online teacher, I have many ways to communicate. I can use my phone, I can use Skype, either by making Skype calls or Skype text, the instant messaging. We use emails. Emails are primary way of contacting families. But no matter what you use, even if it's carrier pigeon, just make sure the carrier pigeon is well fed and doesn't fly during inclement weather.
Yes.
But make sure that that line of communication is open. We're not asking you to answer every question for your student, obviously. All right, we want the student to learn and learn how to learn. But you can help us out by following, paying attention to syllabi, what is being taught in the class, making sure that the student is ready to learn. Sometimes parents think, oh, well, my class connect, or my CC as we call it, is at 10 o'clock. I'll log in at 10 o'clock.
No.
That's
No, you log
my,
in 30 minutes early. You
or if you
take a
can, yeah.
lesson from a podcaster. You log in 20 minutes early before the podcast starts. I'll actually give you a little behind the scenes secret. I was Chris nicely logged in at 2:23. He didn't log in directly at 2:30 and wondered where I was. I was actually in there talking to another podcast guest, but he so you gotta give these teachers space and grace, because their office hours only 1 hour, if that. They spend more time outside, inside the classroom, masked up when your kids go home grading papers. And yes, I've been on phone calls with teachers who are grading papers as they're talking to me. And it's like, really? Really? Don't make us wait. Do not make us sit there, and do not text the teacher beforehand and say, what's the login password at 10 o'clock or at 9:40. Figure it out, people. Figure it out.
Yeah,
Or have your student figure it out. One of the tips that I got off YouTube, because now I'm fascinated how teachers set up their classes now because of COVID. But one of the tips that a parent gave on her YouTube channel is she printed out her son's um, Zoom IDs and everything else and stuck it up on the wall so that the son wasn't coming to her asking, what's this, what's this, what's this. And it's like, that's a brilliant idea. So communicate with the teacher. We don't care how you communicate. We just want you to communicate. Same with a podcaster.
Yes, exactly. And there's all, when we're talking about this, a quote from my days in marching band came rushing back into my memory. Uh, to be late or to be early is to be on time. To be on time is to be late. To be late is to be in trouble. So
Yeah, to be early is to be on time. To be late is to be,
to be on time is to be late, and to be late is to be in
yeah.
trouble.
So, yes, to be late is to be in trouble because imagine this. Chris has, let's say, 20 kids. He doesn't want a parent texting him or emailing them saying, "What's the Zoom password?" He wants you guys to be sitting there waiting for him. And I know with kids with learning disabilities, sometimes the parents have to be on the Zoom with their kids, but at least have little organization and a little space and grace for these teachers who are doing the best job they can during this challenging time. Thank you very much. Enough of my soapbox. Enough
No
of my
worries. No
soapbox.
worries.
So,
No, so I think along with that strong line of communication is, you mentioned it before, is having that grace, because if right now the weather is beautiful. It's, I went for a run this morning. It was nice, late or like upper 50s, low 60s. It's now very sunny out, 70 degrees. In a few months, it's going to be winter. And with winter comes inclement weather, it comes down power lines, and sometimes things happen. And so having that grace of knowing that we are all trying our best, will go a long way to not only calm nerves and allow us to take a deep breath, but also make us more patient and more appreciative, so we can make it through those tough times and really appreciate when things are a lot easier.
yes. And please, please don't ask the teacher to stay extra in their office hours to work with your kids because you can hire tutors. I know that my college offers a tutoring center for free, and I know that most of these teachers want to go home at the end of the day. And so please use these office hours sparingly. Enough of my other soapbox because I love it when um, parents say, "Oh, Susie Q has to be late to class." I'm like, well, fine. Susie Q can be late to class, but she's going to walk into the middle of drama class, and we're not going to make a big deal of it. Drove that drove me nuts when I was in education, and the parents like, okay, really, want you don't want me to talk to you? And I'm like, no, I am trying to teach a class here. So please use those office hours sparingly, and please just be kind and courteous of these teachers who are going through interesting time right now. Thank you, COVID.
Yeah, it is very trying sometimes because, as I said, we have a lot of ways of communicating. And for example, on Skype, I'm on 4 or 5 different groups that various teachers communicate on. And sometimes we'll get we'll get chatting at 8, 9:30 at night. 8:39, 9:30, 10 at night, because we're discussing something related to school. And and sometimes I hear the ding, the ding, the ding, the ding, the ding, and I just have to close my computer, because not that I don't want to be involved in my uh, in my colleagues' conversations,
Yeah.
but you need this as a teacher teaching at home. You have to set boundaries,
Yeah.
because you could literally just work yourself crazy. I mean, there's always paperwork. When you know that, special ed teachers, they're basically treading water in paperwork. And so, you have to make sure you set boundaries, because, and that will actually make you a better professional, because you'll be more organized to do the work in the time you allow yourself. And then you appreciate the time that you have off and be more rested for the next time you have to log in and work with students.
Chris, as we wrap this interview up, and you guys, it's going to be a two-part interview because I can tell that Chris is just as passionate as I am about special ed. So, as we wrap this interview up, do you have any questions for me?
Yes, Win. Who is the most impressionable teacher that you've ever had?
Oh, the most impressive teacher that I ever had was a teacher that made me fall in love with English. And at the time, I was in third grade, and a lot of people don't, well, they know I went to a private school, but they don't know how I fell in love with communications aspects and all English aspects. And so this teacher taught me how to do cursive writing. And the story goes, well, my parents did the old um, parent teacher conference. And of course, my dad, being my dad, goes to this teacher, goes, well, you can't get a pencil out of Wynn's hand. And then you have a problem because this teacher knew I had special needs. And she goes, well, do you want Wynn to learn cursive? And my dad goes, you can't get a pencil out of Wynn's hand. And so my teacher goes, well, that's it. We're teaching Wynn is cursive. And so this teacher ended up um, making me fall in love with writing and English and everything else because she didn't necessarily believe that my special needs were going to stop me.
That's fantastic. That is definitely someone you want to look up to. That teacher that gives you the feeling that nothing can stop you, that any goal is achievable.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I have one more question for
Yeah, go
you that
ahead.
I reserve for my guests on my podcast. What is your favorite dinosaur?
Oh, what is my favorite dinosaur? I would have to say a T-Rex because they they're big and tall and have magical powers of being strong. And the last time I we actually, and a lot of people don't know this, um I would say about a good 20 minutes away from my house, we actually had a burial dig um,
Hmm.
2 years ago now, and they found some amazing fossils. If you type in, you guys, Google it, snowmass colonial, and then type in fossils, you will see what they did up 20 minutes away from my house. And it was fascinating how we we actually brought Denver Nature and Science Scientologists up here to help with the dig, and it was fascinating to see what they actually did.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, where I grew up in Michigan, we lived about 15 minutes away from a very, very large mammoth excavation site. And so, and I loved dinosaurs growing up. Absolutely, I was infatuated with them. So going to that excavation site was a dream come true for 5-year-old me. So that was
Yeah,
very fun.
exactly.
That's cool that you
And
have that so
so,
close to your house.
so it's amazing what these excavation sites can actually do. And Chris, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. And where can people find you, and where could people get a hold of you if they choose to do so?
Well, again, Wynn, thank you very much for this opportunity. Well, I can be reached at chrisdtgordon.com. I am a professional speaker as long with being as well as being a teacher. And that is where you can find out about my speaking. Usually I do speak a lot better than I am right now. You can also find me on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Chris DT Gordon. And I also have a podcast called Scar Bearers. And that's the podcast, the show where I talk about my experiences with surviving and thriving from contracting necrotizing fasciitis, also known as flesh-eating bacteria. And I interview others who share their stories of struggle and recovery and thriving.
We're, we're going to have to do part two on that because,
Yes.
gee, peace, that must have been a scary time. And I'll leave it at that of having your own body eat itself. Geez, there are times in the land of cerebral palsy I got scared, but never as that much.
Well, if nothing else, it's given me permanent cosplay. So because I look like a discount Deadpool, if you're familiar with that character. So yes, we'll definitely have to continue the
Yeah,
conversation.
we'll definitely have. And I appreciate you guys tuning in and listening to Chris's story. And as I said, Chris is coming back for part two, you guys, to explain to you guys about the podcast and about his story of survival. And so hopefully you guys enjoyed part one. As I said, this is part one, and I will catch you guys later. Bye, you guys.